The jungle breathed, thick with humidity and secrets. It pulsed with unseen life. Every leaf a listening ear, every root a waiting trap. Somewhere deep within its green veins, something foreign stirred. Metal, movement, and voices that didn't belong. The Zarketh Dominion had arrived. General Kaz stood at the front of his vanguard, towering above his warriors, his obsidian armor reflecting the filtered sunlight that managed to pierce the canopy. His mandibles clicked in irritation. The world was loud, too alive, too unstructured. He detested chaos, and this planet reeked of it. Beside him hovered a skittering drone relaying telemetry from the forward scouts. "We've secured a capture zone." The operator buzzed through a voice synthesizer. 12 human operatives extracted. Minimal resistance. Containment stable. Kaz turned to his second-in-command, a pale, thin-eyed scientist named Lorvac. "You see, their strength is a myth. Soft-bodied bipeds with outdated weapons. All this noise for nothing." Lorvac's spindly fingers tapped his data slate. "Respectfully, General, I advise caution. The humans we captured, some of them are specialists. Their designations suggest elite military training." Kaz let out a rasping laugh. "Their designations mean nothing. We've conquered species with bone armor and acid breath. These Americans you're concerned about, they bleed like the rest." Still, Lorvac's voice lowered. And yet one escaped. Kaz laughter died. From the thick underbrush, unseen and unheard, Staff Sergeant Cole Maddox watched the alien contingent drag his teammates into a mobile containment field. They were gagged, shackled, stripped of equipment, but alive. That was more than Maddox had expected. He had counted 9 of them. 10 of Garcia made it through the blast radius. He'd seen the skiff land from a nearby ridge hours earlier, sleek, angular, black like a scar on the jungle. The Zarketh had deployed quickly, arrogantly. No reconnaissance. No perimeters. Maddox had assessed them as overconfident, possibly in used to asymmetrical resistance. That was a weakness he could work with. He didn't move. Not yet. Patience was part of the hunt. Behind him, vines swayed gently. Cicadas sang. He blended into the rhythm, eyes scanning through a crude scope fashioned from shattered optics and salvaged glass. His camouflage was simple: mud, foliage, blood. Not because it was primitive, but because it was familiar. The jungle was his home now. He wore it. Below, the aliens began erecting a perimeter. 2 guards stood too close together, overlapping fields of view. Poor spacing. Sloppy. Maddox memorized their pattern. Every detail mattered: weapon type, posture, how often they checked their sectors. The Zarketh weren't stupid, but they were complacent. He could work with that, too. Inside the field, Reese shifted his weight and made brief eye contact with Garcia. Lynn, the team's comms specialist, was unconscious, a long gash visible across his temple. No medical attention. No real concern. The aliens didn't view them as threats. That was mistake number 1. Garcia whispered. "You think Maddox made it?" Reese didn't reply. He didn't need to. The answer wasn't in the words. It was in the look he gave back. High above, Kaz addressed his troops. "We will deliver these specimens to the Citadel for study. Let their broken forms stand as proof that Earth was never a challenge." He raised a clenched fist. The Zarketh roared. Maddox adjusted his grip on the rifle. The safety had been rerouted. The chamber was unstable. He'd have maybe 6 shots before it failed. He didn't plan to use it until it mattered. For now, he marked his exits and counted his seconds. Lorvac wandered to the edge of the clearing, scanning the jungle with analytical unease. "We've yet to account for the 12th human." Kaz scoffed. "If he's hiding in this jungle, he'll die here. It is not their domain." "No," Lorvac said quietly, "but it might be his." He reviewed the neural imprint logs from the captured humans. One name pulsed brighter than the others. Maddox Cole, a decorated. Special Forces. Operative history redacted beyond Tier 3 clearance. Records marked with caution flags from multiple sectors. This wasn't just a soldier. He was something more. Lorvac didn't share that information with the general. It was too late now. Far from the perimeter, Maddox checked his traps. He had constructed 5. 2 deadfalls, 1 tripwire snare, and 2 chemical pits primed with venom extracted from local plant life. Primitive, yes, but effective. He didn't need finesse. He needed time. His mind raced through probabilities. Rescue was unlikely. Reinforcements impossible. This wasn't about getting out anymore. It was about getting them out. He ran a final systems check on his gear. 3 knives, 1 functioning sidearm with a cracked barrel, and a comlink that only received. No outgoing signal. That meant no distractions. Just him and the mission. The sun dipped below the tree line, bathing the jungle in deep reds and shadowed golds. Dusk brought a new sound to the trees, one even the aliens could hear. The jungle exhaled. Something ancient and unseen turned over in the dirt. Kostir ordered his guards to rotate. The new patrol was even sloppier. Half alert, half curious, they moved like conquerors, not soldiers. Maddox waited for the perfect moment. Then he let the trap spring. A scream echoed across the canopy, sharp and sudden. Then another. A plasma burst fired into the sky, wild, directionless. The aliens formed a defensive circle. Kostir roared for silence. Reese looked up from his place in the containment field. The guards were gone. The perimeter had broken. And in the distance, a skull-painted figure moved through the trees like smoke. Maddox whispered into the stolen comlink, only 4 words. Game started. Stay ready. Back in the clearing, Lorvac stared at the blood trail near the jungle's edge. One of the patrol units had vanished. No gunfire. No alert. Just missing. Kostir's voice thundered. Hunt him. Flush him out. But he's already inside, Lorvac said softly. You just don't know it. The jungle reclaimed its silence. The war hadn't ended. It had begun, and Cole Maddox was just getting started. The jungle devoured noise as quickly as it devoured light. Even the buzzing insects seemed to grow cautious, as if aware that something far more dangerous than them now stalked beneath the canopy. Cole Maddox crouched behind a curtain of hanging vines, his breath steady, finger resting on the trigger of a plasma rifle he'd stripped from a dead Zarketh. The alien weapon felt too light, too cold. He preferred steel, weight, recoil. But he wasn't sentimental. It worked. That was enough. Through his scope, he watched a 6 alien patrol trudge through the muddy clearing, their armor scratched and soaked in jungle grime. Their once imperious posture had been replaced with tight clusters, twitching heads, and constantly adjusting aim. They were beginning to understand. That pleased him. He adjusted his sights and waited. They passed the trap he'd laid, tripwire from salvaged gear, strung ankle-high between 2 roots. The last Zarketh clipped it. The snare activated, yanking him backward into a camouflage spike trap. His scream was short and wet. The others fired in every direction, plasma bolts searing into trees, rock, and leaves. By the time they stopped shooting, 2 were down, friendly fire. The survivors backed against one another, eyes scanning for a ghost they couldn't track. Maddox didn't move. He didn't need to. They were already dying inside. He whispered into the comm stolen from one of the first scouts. 1 patrol neutralized. For remaining. Reese's voice crackled back, thin and breathless. Copy, movement from the east. They're pushing toward the river. Let them. The river's waiting. Reese coughed. You rigged the river? Rigged everything. There was no satisfaction in the kills. No pride. He was doing what he was trained to do. Unravel the enemy piece by piece, mind before body. This wasn't about revenge. It was about efficiency, about sending a message. On board the Zarketh command skiff, General Kostir seethed. 12 warriors dead. For missing. Not a single visual on the enemy. His ship's internal systems had been compromised. Power fluctuations, weapon malfunctions, false signals across every channel. A human was dismantling them. He stormed into the data chamber, where Lorvac frantically rewired neural taps. How is this happening? Kostir growled, his claws gouging the steel floor. Lorvac didn't look up. He's using your pride against you. You deployed wide patrols, assuming they'd flush him. Instead, you isolated your assets. He picks them off because he understands your fear. Kostir slammed a fist into the console. He is one man. Lorvac met his eyes for the first time. And you are bleeding an army because of him. The general turned, silent for a moment. His tendrils twitched with controlled rage. How do we kill him? He asked finally. You don't, Lorvac said, his voice hollow. You survive him. Outside, Maddox moved through the jungle like smoke, placing charges beneath roots, re-rigging a pressure mine with a handmade trigger of vine and salvage circuit board. He didn't sleep. He barely ate, but his body operated at maximum efficiency, trained to endure and adapt. He paused near fallen Zarketh. The alien's blood had soaked the soil black. He crouched, studying the angle of impact, the spray pattern. It told him what he needed: panic fire, 2 seconds of hesitation, then death. They were losing the will to fight. That would make them careless. He could use that. Footsteps approached, too heavy, not human. Maddox melted into the foliage. 2 Zarketh soldiers passed beneath his perch, weapons up, heads constantly darting. One of them muttered something. The other didn't reply. A tree root gave beneath their feet. Maddox had hollowed it and filled it with a concentrated dose of the neurotoxin harvested from a local plant. The lead alien collapsed instantly, convulsing. The other turned to help. A knife flashed, curved and black. The Zarketh dropped silently, blood gurgling from his neck. Maddox retrieved the blade, wiped it clean, and kept moving. No rest. No breaks. He'd become the jungle's will, unforgiving, patient, and absolute. Back at the crash site, Reese and 2 other survivors had taken shelter in a collapsed escape pod. They were weak, dehydrated, barely armed, but alive. Every hour Maddox bought them was another chance to regroup, to strike back. Reese stared at the scorched trees. You think he's coming back? Private Lin, a Korean comms specialist, nodded weakly. He always comes back. As if on cue, a satchel dropped through the hole in the roof. Rations, water, a medkit. No words, just action. Maddox didn't wait for thanks. He moved like a phantom, his body painted in layers of mud, ash, and blood. Somewhere along the way, the man had become the mask. Night fell again. The aliens lit fires, trying to force shadows back. It didn't work. Maddox watched them from the treetops. His breath slow, his eyes hard. He could see the tremors in their hands. They clutched weapons not as tools, but as talismans of protection. He activated a beacon. It mimicked a Zarketh distress signal. The nearest squad ran toward it, thinking reinforcements had arrived. The beacon exploded, concussive, blinding loud. In the smoke, Maddox descended. Gunshots. Screams. Then silence. By morning, 22 Zarketh were dead. The rest were bottlenecked along the river's edge, trapped between steep cliffs and a body of water they couldn't cross. They never expected to need an escape route. In their panic, they sent a transmission, an encrypted burst signal requesting emergency extraction. Maddox intercepted it. He let them send it. Let them hope. Inside the command skiff, Lorvac stared at the dwindling squad numbers. He's forcing retreat, bleeding morale, turning your warriors into refugees. Kostir paced the floor. He's not human. No, he's what humans become when cornered. Kostir slammed his claw against the wall. Then I will corner him. Myself. The scientist didn't argue. He simply whispered, "Be careful, General. This isn't war anymore. It's something older." In the jungle, Maddox found an alien helmet. He carved into its smooth metal with a combat knife, etched a crude symbol, a skull, its mouth open in defiance. He mounted it on a stick and drove it into the ground near the Zarketh's last known coordinates. A message. The aliens saw it hours later. One trembled. Another dropped his rifle. The symbol had no translation, but it spoke to them in a way that pierced biology. It meant death had come. Back at the crash pod, Reese listened to the explosions in the distance and shook his head. They should have run when they had the chance. Private Lin watched the canopy sway with invisible movement. He's not just surviving. He's proving something. Reese coughed. Proving what? That humans are predators. But Americans? There's something else. In the distance, Maddox stood on a cliffside, eyes locked on the burning wreckage of an alien patrol. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply whispered to the wind, keep watching, and then he disappeared again. Ash drifted through the humid air, mixing with the scent of scorched bark and ionized blood. Smoke curled up from the shattered husk of a Zarketh transport vessel. Now half submerged in a swamp, Maddox had deliberately rerouted with explosives and felled trees. The ship hadn't crashed. It had been lured. Sabotage from within, guided by panic and false telemetry until it slammed into the jungle like a wounded animal. The hunt had escalated. Now was war. Cole Maddox emerged from the water, mud and algae clinging to his uniform. His skull mask, once stark white, was now streaked with grime, the American flag faded but visible. In his hands, he carried an alien plasma blade, modified with a human grip. He moved in silence toward the wreckage. Not to finish them. Not yet. Zarketh soldiers crawled from the debris, disoriented and coughing. Their comms were down, their command structure fractured. Maddox circled them like a wolf, unseen but ever present. He knew they'd regroup, knew they'd try one last counteroffensive. That's what made them predictable. He watched from a perch as General Kaztir limped from the flames, one arm hanging at his side, burned and useless. His ornate armor was cracked, smoke curling from vents. Around him, the last of his elite, 5 warriors, formed a broken semicircle, weapons drawn. "We hold here," Kaztir growled, blood oozing from his split mandibles. "He comes to us now. He wants the final blow. We deny it." Lorvac stood behind the general, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You don't understand. This isn't a human looking for victory. He's not trying to win." Kaztir snarled. "Then what is he trying to do?" "Finish the story," Lorvac whispered. "He's writing something with our blood." A short distance away, Maddox crouched over a crude map drawn in the dirt with a stick. The river, the cliffs, the wreck, his own team's hidden camp. Everything was accounted for. Every movement calculated. He was writing the end, one move at a time. His hand hovered over the next step. Not a kill. A message. He moved again. The Zarketh had dug in, creating a half-circle of barricades using the wreckage. Kaztir stood at the center, shouting commands, forcing order into chaos. They were down to plasma rifles, 3 motion drones, and a single functioning turret. It would not be enough. And deep down they knew it. A drone pinged, movement at the edge of the trees. Then silence. The second drone turned to scan. Its signal died. Kaztir's voice rose. "Eyes sharp. He is close." They waited, weapons aimed outward. Hours passed. The jungle gave no answer. Then, without warning, the last drone fell from the sky. A moment later, something was thrown into the camp, small, cylindrical, blinking. Lorvac saw it too late. The flashbang went off, blinding even through shut eyelids. Maddox was already inside the perimeter. He moved like a whisper of death, low and fast. One Zarketh turned just in time to see his own plasma blade driven through his throat. Another spun and fired wildly, hitting a comrade in the chest. Maddox struck again and again, each blow surgical, unrelenting. Lorvac scrambled for cover, clutching a datapad. He didn't see the elbow that smashed his jaw. He collapsed, spitting blood and teeth. Kaztir fired his sidearm, forcing Maddox to retreat behind a barricade. Plasma bolts scorched the air. Maddox leaned out, returning fire with a stolen rifle. A bolt caught Kaztir in the thigh, dropping him to one knee. The field went still. 3 Zarketh lay dead. 1 wounded. Kaztir breathing hard, eyes scanning. Maddox stepped from the shadows, blade in hand, rifle slung across his back. His mask was cracked, one eye exposed but calm. Controlled. Unshaken. Kaztir bared his fangs. "Why not finish it, human? You could have killed me 100 times. Maddox didn't respond immediately. He stared at the general, then at Lorvac, writhing nearby. "You thought we were just animals," Maddox said finally. "But you don't understand what we really are." Kaztir sneered. "You're predators. Nothing more." Maddox stepped closer. "No. Predators hunt for need. Apex predators hunt for control." The blade struck fast. Kaztir parried with a grunt, launching into a desperate charge. Maddox ducked, countered, and drove a knee into the alien's burned side. The general collapsed, wheezing. Maddox didn't finish him. Not yet. He turned to Lorvac. Transmit everything. All your data. The scans, the recordings, your logs. Beam it to your fleet. Lorvac trembled, holding his jaw. Why? So, they understand what happened here. So they know why they should never come back. You think they'll fear you? No, Maddox said. They'll fear what created me. Lorvac complied. He sent the broadcast. Every decrypted image, every report, every death. A record of a Zarketh's failure. When a message was away, Maddox turned to Kostir again. The general tried to rise, snarling. We will return. No, Maddox said. You won't. He raised the blade. Kostir lunged, but the human was faster. The strike was clean, through the throat, severing spine and silencing the last voice of defiance. Lorvac screamed. Maddox stepped back, watching the alien writhe. You want to live? He asked. The scientist didn't answer. Then run. Maddox turned and walked away. He found his team minutes later, emerging from the jungle like revenants. Rhys stood, leaning on Lynn for support. Their eyes widened at the sight of him. Bloodstained, cracked mask, quiet rage still burning. It's done, Rhys asked. Maddox nodded. It's done. They moved out together, heading for the uplink point. A rescue team would find them soon. Now that the jamming tower had been destroyed, Maddox had made sure of it. But as they walked, Rhys glanced back. Think they'll come again? Maddox didn't stop. Not after what they saw. Above them, a single Zarketh drone drifted, relaying the last images to the Dominion's high command. A human soldier standing amidst alien bodies, mask half-shattered, blade dripping, and not afraid. The message was clear. Earth was not prey. And some humans, especially the Americans, they were something far worse. The jungle was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was aftermath. Smoke curled in lazy spirals from the shattered husk of the Zarketh vessel. Its once formidable design now broken across the riverbank like the corpse of a beast too arrogant to flee. Bodies lay still beneath the canopy, weapons abandoned, armor scorched. The air hung heavy with the scent of burnt ozone, blood, and silence. Cole Maddox stood at the edge of the devastation, half-shadowed by a tree older than civilization. His mask was gone, the cracked skull shell lying discarded at his feet. Mud streaked his face. Cuts lined his arms, but his eyes were sharp, alert. He wasn't victorious. He was resolved. Behind him, Rhys limped forward, one arm in a makeshift sling, the other gripping a stolen plasma rifle. Lynn followed, eyes constantly scanning the treetops. They weren't just survivors now. They were changed, hardened. The mission had shifted from survival to warning. What happened here could never be repeated. We got a signal out, Lynn said quietly. IFF beacons live. Should get a response within the hour. Maddox nodded, but didn't turn. Good. Let them find us. Let them see what's left. Rhys lowered himself onto a moss-covered root, wincing. You really think that message is going to do it? Stop the Zarketh from coming back. No, Maddox said, his voice low, but it'll make them think twice. He had watched the transmission go out. Images of mutilated patrols, Zarketh soldiers dying in panic, their command torn apart by one man and a few others clinging to life. But more than the footage, it was the way the message was framed. Not a plea for help. A statement. A warning carved into the bones of invaders. On the Dominion homeworld, the broadcast was received in silence by the High Council. Their great chamber, once filled with pride and conquest, was reduced to stunned stillness. Generals leaned forward. Scientists paused mid-sentence. Leaders blinked in disbelief. A Zarketh elder watched the final frame, the blood-smeared helmet mounted on a spike beneath a human flag, and uttered the words that would change galactic policy forever. We mistook them for animals, she said. We forgot that some predators smile before they bite. In the jungle, Maddox paced to a small rise overlooking the valley below. A slow rain had begun, washing away blood, but not memory. He closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm of earth around him, the soil that welcomed him, the air that fed his lungs, the wind whispering through the canopy like an old ally. He had been trained for warfare, taught how to kill, how to break, how to endure. But this was something deeper. The Zarketh hadn't just fought humans. They had trespassed against something primal, something ancient. Reese joined him, silence stretching between them like an old song neither needed to hum aloud. "They're gonna make you a legend, you know," he muttered. Maddox didn't look over. "Don't care." "Still," Reese said, chuckling through pain. "It's not every day one man dismantles a whole alien war party." "It wasn't just me," Maddox replied. "You held on." Lynn ran comms. "Garcia, before he went down, bought me time to flank. We all fought." "Yeah," Reese said softly, his smile fading. "We did." They stood there until the roar of approaching rotors broke the quiet. A black VTOL craft emerged from the mist, its silhouette cutting through the fog like a ghost. The insignia on its wings was American, but the crew wore no flags. Only masks. Blank. Professional. Extraction. Maddox turned and made his way back to the clearing. Medics were already fanning out. Lynn had collapsed under the weight of his exhaustion. Reese sat still, waving them off with one good arm. Maddox said nothing as they approached, only nodded once and handed over a data chip. One of the officers took it, reading the encoded label. Zarketh _Terminus record _01. "You left survivors?" the officer asked. "No," Maddox said flatly. "I left a witness." The officer hesitated. "That wasn't part of the mission." "It is now," Maddox replied. "They'll remember the footage." But fear doesn't spread through dead bodies. It spreads through the ones who crawl back with stories. The officer didn't argue. He simply saluted. As they lifted off, the jungle fell away beneath them. The ship banked slightly, giving them one last look at the wreckage below: burned trees, shattered hulls, broken lines of retreat. But above it all, one thing remained untouched. A single helmet. A cracked Zarketh skull mask, painted over in red, white, and blue, mounted on a sharpened stake. A message that didn't need translation. Hours later, in orbit, aboard the recon fleet watching from afar, the analysts reviewed the footage. No one spoke. One by one, they watched entire Zarketh squads vanish, tracked by stolen tech and jungle tactics. One by one, they witnessed bodies fall in silence, guns stolen, patrols shattered, orders ignored. And then they saw him. A human in war paint, never speaking, never breaking, eyes cold as vacuum, moving through death like he'd built a home there. One analyst finally broke the silence. "How many of him do they have?" No one answered, because deep down, they all knew the same truth. One was enough. Back on Earth, weeks later, a Senate committee reviewed classified footage in a closed session. Generals debated countermeasures. Intelligence officers proposed contingency plans. But one civilian advisor said what none of the others wanted to admit. The Zarketh weren't defeated by superior firepower. They were undone by one simple thing. They believed humans were manageable. And when asked why the Americans had responded so violently, so decisively, the advisor pointed at the footage of Maddox carving through the jungle. "Because when you corner a predator, it fights," she said. "But when you corner an apex predator, it hunts you until your bones are lost to history." Cole Maddox never gave interviews, never wrote a memoir. He returned to a small cabin in a forgotten forest and trained in silence. But others remembered. Other teams prepared. And stories spread. Not about victory, but about what waited in the dark should anyone forget Earth's lesson. Somewhere in deep space, a new alien civilization studied the data and marked Earth as extreme risk. Avoid engagement. Others debated testing that warning. But the ones who truly understood, they didn't come closer. They sent drones. They watched from afar. And they prayed they never heard those words spoken again. They thought we were predators. They didn't know we were Americans.